my name is Sarah Spears.
And I'm Mackenzie Ayers. And the grade level we chose to collectively teach was ninth grade, and we chose Biology 1 as our course. And the standard that we chose was over photosynthesis. So we titled our lesson Flow of Photosynthesis. The lesson will be 50 minutes for 5 classes, so it's going to be a week lesson. Some of the focus questions / big ideas that we're going to hit and the students will be able to address will be: what are the products of photosynthesis? What is the chemical equation for photosynthesis? How does it occur? How can coding benefit learning? How do we code? How does energy flow and matter in the cell affect the cell? And what's it used for? What are the steps of photosynthesis and how do they work together? And then the learning objectives we want to address will be: the students will show their understanding through a summative assessment at the end of the school week. They will be able to recognize the process of photosynthesis and understand what is occurring during photosynthesis, know the chemical equations, and be able to identify academic language for this lesson. And they'll be given 2 days to design a model for photosynthesis that they'll be graded on, and they'll be placed into groups to promote collaborative learning. And the students will also be given 2 days to work on Scratch, the program we chose to use. They'll be able to code a game that demonstrates their learning and encourages them to become actively involved in learning. Students will be able to demonstrate computational thinking skills alongside computer science skills. Students will know the academic language for this lesson thoroughly. Students will show their understanding through a presentation of their program.
So the standard that we chose for Biology 1 is LS 1.8, and it's create a model of photosynthesis demonstrating the net flow of matter and energy into a cell. Use the model to explain energy transfer from light energy into stored chemical energy in the product. So the academic language that we really want to address in this lesson is going to be this chart right here. So we're going to go over photosynthesis, glucose, carbon dioxide, oxygen, ADP, ATP, autotrophs, Calvin cycle, light absorption, chlorophyll, chloroplast, granum, pigment, thylakoid, cellular respiration, cell membrane, mesophyll cells, and glycerolide 3-phosphate. And we decided to go ahead and define every term so that if someone else were to teach this lesson, they would know which each word means. However, we are going to focus on certain vocabulary words more. So we're going to be looking especially at photosynthesis, glucose, carbon dioxide, oxygen, and words like that, because that is all part of the chemical equation of photosynthesis that we really want our students to learn and focus on. But of course, we're also going to be using all of these other words. Some more academic language that we have for our computational thinking and computer science part of the lesson is going to be Scratch, which is the program that we're going to be using to code. We also have the word code, since that's what students will be doing. And then we have decomposition, pattern recognition, algorithms, and hypothesis. We went ahead and defined all of these words as well so that they're able to know exactly what we're looking for in this part of the lesson.
So our rationale for using computational thinking concepts to teach this standard it says it here, but it's basically photosynthesis has stages that are much like sequencing that you would find in computational thinking itself. So there's a chain reaction, one thing follows another, and that's basically what a sequence is. And the students will use computational thinking versus algorithmic thinking, because towards the end of the lesson, they'll be putting the abstract models, which would be algorithmic, into action, making it computational by the way of using Scratch. So algorithmic thinking is thinking that students are more familiar with, as we have seen, found out, worked with. So this lesson is going to help them see how to put that into real life and transforming algorithmic thinking into computational thinking. And they'll be able to take this skill and the material they've learned and hopefully use it in their real lives is the plan. So moving on into our pre-assessment, we're going to determine their knowledge by giving them a sticky note, and they can write all the things they already know about photosynthesis, and they'll also take a short quiz on Socrative to give us a basis on how much we need to address and how much time we'll need to spend on certain topics that they may or may not already know. And next would be our hook, and we're going to use a photosynthesis song that we found on YouTube. This song will make the students dial their minds into the lesson, and it'll also be a good transition through the days. It can help by being played at the beginning of class, or when we're switching into groups, we can play it in the background, stuff like that. That song is a song, it has the music of a song that our students will probably be familiar with based on the radio station and stuff. So that'll make it a little more enjoyable for them to listen to, and hopefully they won't think it's just cheesy to listen to. So a real world connection the students will have. Hopefully by learning to code, the students will be able to apply this knowledge in future assignments or even their future career fields. Maybe it'll give them a little step up when they get into higher grade levels like college or into maybe their senior year. Maybe their focus is computer science in high school. Maybe they'll be able to use this and they'll be a little more familiar with it. So the student reflection that we're going to do is each student will list 2 to 3 things they've learned about photosynthesis and energy conversion each day, and that'll act as an exit ticket for the day, and it can serve for us as a gauge to see how they've grasped each topic.
So for the assessments part of the lesson, we're going to be doing formative assessments throughout the entire week. So we're going to be walking around the classroom and checking on, how the students are doing and how their work's coming along. We're going to ask them questions to help them engage in more computational thinking and higher level thinking. And we're also going to assess them every day with short little Socrative quizzes or a post-it note just to kind of see how they were doing throughout that day and if they have any other questions that we can address the next day. We're going to end the week with a summative assessment, and this is going to be a test that's going to have true and false, multiple choice, short answers, questions, and one essay question, because we also want to include our reading and writing standards in this as well. And we're going to also be grading them on their Scratch projects and the model that they designed. So for formative assessments, that's just all explained right here. And these are the type of assessments that we're going to be using this week. And then over here, we have how everything is going to be broken down. So mastery of the topic, we're going to say is a 75% or better on the summative assessment on Friday. And the rubric is going to be provided for them too, for the essay questions. And that's also going to help with, the other students that need that extra something to tell them what we're looking for. So on the summative assessment, this is how we're going to be weighting all the questions. So we're doing multiple choice is 35%, true and false 15%, short answer 25, and essays 25. And then for Scratch, we're really going to be focusing on how they did their coding and their program. Does it work? We're also going to be looking at the design because we want our students to be creative and have fun with this project. And also we want to make sure that they're really grasping what it was that we wanted them to learn, which is photosynthesis. And then we're also going to be grading them on their presentation. So the presentations are going to be on the 4th day, and it's just going to be a really short, like 1-minute presentation where they can show the class the game that they made. So we're also going to add that into our overall grade for their Scratch program. And then for the model, we're going to be focusing mainly on if they understood the content. And then we're also going to grade on creativity, participation, and teamwork, because we don't want one student doing all of the work. We want everyone participating. So during the model time, We're also going to be walking around the classroom and making sure that everyone in each team is participating and putting in the effort. And then also we're going to help them get creative, give them ideas, maybe give them examples. And so that's all going to go into the total grade for that as well. And then these are all of the things that the assessments require students to do. So it's going to require them to organize, interpret, and analyze. And they're going to have to use all three of those for every single project and assessment. And then the writing, draw conclusions, make generalizations, produce arguments. That's also going to be part of everyone. And produce arguments is mainly going to be in the essay part of the summative assessment. And then connection to prior learning, synthesize, and evaluate information. So we really want our students to get engaged and get as much as they can out of this lesson. So that's why we try to hit every single point on that section.
So for our academic feedback, the scratch assignment is going to be submitted through our Google Classroom, and they'll get their feedback back on Monday. It will be positive yet constructive because there might need to be improvements made, but we always want to point out the positives. So for every negative, at least show 2 positive things to keep a student high. A student will have the chance to remake their grade and resubmit it if they don't like their grade, because we aren't trying to set our kids up for failure. We really want them to succeed, so we want to be able to give them those resources to do so. And for the model assignment, each student's going to be given a rubric with their feedback listed on it. So they're going to have that rubric to begin with, and then we're going to give them one that has the feedback on it so they can understand why they got the score they received. And if they have any questions, they can come ask us about it, but it'll also not just be just scores. We'll tell them why they received that score so they better understand why they're receiving their grade. And the summative assessment, which is on day 5, will also be returned on Monday. We want to make sure they get their grades timely and that they know where they're standing in the class. We don't want to keep them just on the edge here. We'll look over the test. We will, address the most questions that were missed in class so that they can learn that concept and understand. So maybe they'll understand why they missed it, and they'll be able to see what the correct answer actually was. Any questions they may have, we'll be able to address those Monday in class, or they'll be able to email us through our Google Classroom. As always, that's something we will want them to know. The feedback for the summative assessment will be included on the test as it's handed back with comments. So the students will turn in a sticky note at the end of the class as part of their participation. On the sticky note, they'll write their name and any other questions they have about the class that they either didn't have time to ask, they didn't want to ask in front of everyone, things like that. So we can make sure that they are not left in the dark and we're able to answer any questions they have. So any of these questions that are left on their sticky notes for their exit ticket, that will be addressed in the following class at the beginning. And the test will be uploaded and scanned into our Google Classroom so that they can refer back and they can study off of that for the unit exams, or they can look at what they put and then look at the answers on there for future reference so they know the material. Sorry, I'm trying to make this scroll. So I'm going to go into the first 2 days. Since our lesson is a 5-day, week-long lesson, I'll go into the first 2 days right fast. So for day 1 and 2, the first day we're going to spend about 30 minutes reintroducing the material to the students, since they should have read over the chapter as homework the night before. So it'll be a reintroduction, but we'll make sure to hit all the topics so they know what we're going over. We'll spend about 30 minutes that day doing that, and then they'll have 20 minutes. We're going to break them up into groups of about probably 4 or 5 students per group, and we'll give them instruction on their models, on what they're going to be making. And by models, we're going to have either large sheets of paper with colored pencils and markers up at the front. We're also going to try to have construction paper and scissors and glue and pipe cleaners so that they'll be able to make more of a 3D model if they want. If they want to draw it, that's fine. If they want to make something that's more tangible to them, that helps them learn better, or they think that's going to be more fun, they can do that. So we'll also try to have some sheets of foam, some push pins, sticky notes, things like that, just so that they can do however they want to. However, their minds want to get creative, they'll have the resources up there to make their models. For photosynthesis, they're going to be showing the flow of energy that occurs through photosynthesis on this model. So they'll have the last 20 minutes of the first class, and then the next class, they'll have the entire class to work on their models because they can't do it as homework. So we want to make sure they have all the time they need. We're putting them into groups as well. That is so that they can learn cooperatively. The high can help the low, and the low can help the high. So putting them into groups is not just so that they can get it done faster, it's to improve their learning and help them build their teamwork for their future, because they aren't going to be working by themselves just in the future either. Oh, it's going crazy. So we're going to use the photosynthesis song as a transition from instruction to creativity. We're going to walk around the room as they're working, help the students out with whatever questions they need. We're going to be asking them questions like, how could you represent the thylakoid in this model? How does the thylakoid function, and what is its purpose? We're going to address any questions that they may have, like, what are the products of photosynthesis? We want to make sure that we're quizzing them through the class just to see how they're doing, take a formative assessment of how they're doing for the class. And then we're only going to need, it's going to be 2 class periods, so that's going to be 100 minutes for the first 2 days. And then how do the learning segments align with objectives and allow for higher order thinking? So we're going to be asking questions that address their higher order thinking to bring in our computational thinking standards that we're trying to in place. So as they're working, that's when we're going to be walking around, asking them those questions and having them demonstrate their knowledge of the content. That's going to be based on their knowledge, so that's going to be in their model. It's also going to be put into their answers as we're asking questions to the whole class. And then I guess we'll move on to the next 2 days.
So for day 3 and 4, what we're going to be doing is we're going to have students be working individually. So on the 3rd day, that's when we're going to also do a 30-minute lecture and then also field any questions that students may have. And then we're going to have them be working individually. So we're going to provide laptop carts, paper and pencils, and an interactive smartboard for questions as well. Every student will have a laptop and they will pull up Scratch. And we're also going to go over with them how they're going to use it, what kind of blocks they're going to be using. And we're going to show them an example of what we're looking for, and then also make it very clear what we want them to accomplish, which we want them to create a short game that demonstrates the flow of matter in photosynthesis. So they could do a game where they have plants and you have to click on the sun icon so that your plant can conduct photosynthesis. So Over here, it has that outlined that we're going to have 30 minutes on day 3 and 20 minutes on day 4. That is going to be for just lecturing and then also working on the project. So then they're going to have the last part of class on day 3 to work on their project. And then on day 4, they're going to have the first 20 minutes to finish their project. They can also take it home if they need to because Scratch is accessed online. So they can work on it from anywhere as long as they have internet connection and a laptop. But we want to give them enough class time to also finish this project just in case they don't have that or have the time. So day 4, they're going to have time at the beginning of class to finish the project. And then at the end of class, we're going to be doing our presentations. So every student will have a time limit of 1 minute to do their presentation. And to make this go quicker, we're going to have everyone upload their presentation or a link to it to their Google Classroom. So that way we can just quickly access that to keep it flowing. And what presentations we don't get to on day 4, we will be finishing on day 5 because we want, not on day 5, on Monday, because we want every student to be able to present what they created. So these are some of the questions we're going to be focusing on when it comes to the game because we really want to make sure that they understand the content, but we also want them to be using computational thinking, really engaging with the material, and we want them to understand all the content thoroughly. So just an example, we're going to be asking them, how does the flow of matter and energy in the cell affect the cell? What is this used for? So all of these questions refer back to the very top of our document, which goes over what our goals are for the class. And then down here, it talks about how students will be going over and presenting it. So now, over here, this just explains exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it, and how we're going to be presenting different examples and stuff too. So that way for students that don't really know where to start, they have an idea of something that they could do. And that way they can also see an example of the code as well. So they know how to go about coding their game. And then on day 5, that is when we're going to be doing our summative assessment. So the first 5 minutes we're going to dedicate to any last minute questions, let them look over their notes and then also hand out the test. And we're going to have them take the entire class period to do it because we want to make sure that everyone has enough time to complete it. So they're going to work up into the bell if they need it. And then we're also going to give them a little grace period after the bell too, if they need it to turn it in. But we want to make sure they're not late for their next class. So they'll have 2 minutes after the bell if they need to stay and finish it. And then over here, students will be receiving 3 separate grades for the week. And we talked about this earlier in our assessment. So they're going to be graded on their summative assessment, Scratch, and their model. And all of the questions will be related back to the standard and the process of photosynthesis. So they will need to know how the plant cell works and how matter and energy flows through the membrane. They will need to know the chemical equation of the process and why it is that equation. And so these are the materials that we're going to be using for the last day as well. And that is going to finish up our week for that standard.
So for the technology we're going to be integrating, we're going to be using coding platforms. That's going to be Scratch. The internet resources, we're going to be using YouTube and Scratch. We're going to be using an interactive whiteboard. That'll be our smart board, so they can go up, they can present their models that are on Scratch, put that on there. And the teacher strategies, the best practices we're going to be using modeling. So they're going to be making a model and we'll show them how to do that. The cooperative learning, so that they're working together. Like I said earlier, the highs can help the lows and the lows can help the highs. It is always better to have other people's opinions so that you get a better product and a better learning experience. They're also going to be doing independent learning. That's going to be by way of Scratch because they each need to make their game. They each need to learn how to do the program. It's also not really something that can be done as a group. That just wouldn't work as well for them to be making a game as a group. So we want to separate them back up and see how individually, after they've had time to work with the material and work with other people, how they're understanding the concept individually. So they're going to be implementing we're going to be implementing pre, post, and during lesson activities. We're going to be asking them questions before so that we can know their prior knowledge. We're going to be giving them a test after to see how they have grown, how they further and more understand the material we've covered for the week. And then during the lesson activities, we're going to be asking them questions to see how they're doing. They're also going to turn in exit tickets every day of the week so that we understand how they're understanding. And if we need to address anything in the beginning of the next class, we can do that. There's going to be hands-on learning, so that's going to be their model that they're going to be making. The higher order thinking skills, that's going to be their computational thinking that they're going to be working with, and really learning the steps of that and how they're going to use that to make their scratch game. Real world connections, hopefully they'll be able to take the coding that they've learned in Scratch, be able to take that to the real world. Hopefully they'll be able to take the photosynthesis material that they've learned and take that into the real world. They'll also be learning how to work in groups with people that they may not already know to make connections with those people, and they'll be able to take the skills that they learn from that into the real world as they grow up. So the criteria charts, that's going to be our rubrics we give them, and any accommodations we make that'll fall into that category. So if we have a student who has learning problems, any way that we can help them, that'll fall under that. So if we need to give them a list so that they don't feel as overwhelmed with the material and they need to know exactly what they're going to be doing, then that'll fall under that, and we'll give them that list, we'll give them that chart, we'll give them the further information for their task. The rubrics will also have, so they'll have those, we'll give them rubrics to view to begin with, and then they'll also get a rubric back that's been graded. And so they'll be able to understand what they need to fix and what they did really well on. So also we're going to be doing the evidence of assignment for learning. That's going to be the differentiation as well, to make sure that every student gets to the same end result, maybe just having to alter the middle way a little bit so that they all have the same understanding. So that is equity over equality, so that they all get to the same place. And we'll also be sure to use our academic language that we've listed in here so the students learn more. And the rationale for the teaching strategies, we chose to use Scratch as our platform because it's very simple, it's fun, and it's easy to operate for students. They'll be able to practice computational thinking because they'll need to be able to use algorithms. They'll need to be able to see sequences, repetitions, parallels. So that's going to give them that opportunity to practice the skill they're working on learning. So they'll be able to take that into the real world. So hopefully by having the students code this game, it will make their photosynthesis learning more fun and help them see the different content areas like computer science blend with biology, and know that different contents dip together, and that's how the real world is. You don't just have black and white, you have some gray where things cross over, and hopefully by having them use Scratch and explaining this to them, they'll be able to see that and keep that in mind as they move forward. And The grouping options that we're going to be using is all of them. So they'll be working individually on Scratch. They'll be working in pairs, also as a cooperative, so that they're working in groups. They're um, learning how to work with others. They're getting more ideas for a better product. And then they'll also be in whole group. We'll do that in lecture, and then whole group will come in when we're asking them questions using the Socratic method throughout the lesson and the days of that week.
So for differentiation, we're going to be providing additional materials for all students. So that way the students that we know may need them have access to them. And so what we're going to be doing for the differentiation is for the Scratch program, we're going to be giving them a list of blocks so that they can see the exact blocks that they'll need to complete the assignment. They can use other ones if they need to, but we want to show them the ones that they will definitely need to complete the projects. That way, for the students that might get overwhelmed and have kind of a cognitive overload, that way it's more simple and they can see exactly what they need instead of an excess of the ones that they don't need as well. So what we're also going to do is we're going to be providing rubrics and bullet point lists. So we're going to have a bullet point list which explains what the rubric says, but in a simpler way. And we can put this up on the board so that students can look at it throughout the day. And on that list, we're just going to put, exactly what we're looking for in Scratch. And we want to keep it simple so that students don't get too overwhelmed. And so we're also going to be helping the students too throughout the assignment, and especially the ones we know that may need help. We're going to make a point to go over there, ask them if they have any questions, offer additional help, look over the program, help them work through it because we want every student to succeed. We're also going to record the lecture from the beginning of every class and then post it on their Google Classroom so that way the students can also refer back to it. They'll already have their computer to do the Scratch program, so they'll also have access to the Google Classroom where they can just pull up that lecture and go over that. We're also going to let them use their textbooks and any notes they may have too when they're completing the project. And that goes for every project because you want them to succeed. And so with the model, it's going to be open book, and we're going to offer additional help too and knowledge. And then we can also give students that have other disabilities their accommodations that they may need. And we also want to tier our tests so that way every single test is different, which can help cut back on cheating, but also we want it to be based on level so we know which tests we're giving to each student and we can test them based on their level and where we want them to be. So that way everyone has an equal shot at getting a good grade on this. And we want to make sure that they have good understanding. So we're also going to differentiate our tests and have 3 different assessments for the summative assessment. So our rationale for using the pedagogy methodology that we chose is we're going to be using a collaborative strategy. So we decided on this because we want students to learn from their peers, and we find that students learn best when they can work together and share ideas. This way they can see different viewpoints, and they can also ask questions in a very open, welcoming environment. And also our higher tier students can help our lower tiered and vice versa because everyone brings their own background knowledge and everything to the table, and they can help each other learn. So we also chose a strategy because we think it'll help it be more clear for the projects that we're doing, because we want students to be able to create the model together and work on their teamwork and their participation. And we really want students to learn how to communicate in a formative way. And we want everyone to have a chance to participate. We also want to be able to give feedback and encouragement to others. And it really helps if their peers can help do that too. So if they're doing the model together and they say a great idea, their peers, may tell them that's a great idea. But they can also help them see if there's any problems with that, and then they can work together collaboratively to create the best model that they can. And we also want them to present projects too, so that way we can work together as a class and really appreciate all the hard work that we've put in this week and make sure that everyone knows that their work is appreciated and they did a really good job. And we want them to also see the projects, because by presenting their scratch projects, for example, they're showing each other the content over and over, but in a different way. So it's fun, but it's also engaging and helps them learn even more and really solidify those ideas. Because if they don't understand how one person's game works and how it relates to the material, they may see another game that does. And so that can really help them with their understanding too, by working collaboratively with the entire class as a whole.
And the other main strategy that we're going to be using during these class periods is the Socratic method. This is a way for us to gauge how our students are understanding the topic and measure how the projects are coming along. This method also opens up an extra line of communication between us and the students that may not have been there before. Just because a student knows they can ask questions at any time doesn't exactly mean they're going to do it unless we're already asking them questions. So maybe we can hit a point and they'll be able to ask us anything that they're not quite understanding. So that's going to help us clear up any confusion that the students may be experiencing. By using this method, we'll be stimulating our students to think more critically about the topic, which ties in our focus on computational thinking so that they'll be thinking deeper and furthering their understanding. That's the Socratic method. Helps people stay engaged in the topic at hand. So that's why we really want to implement that into our classrooms. I think it'll be very good for us to see how our students are doing and how they're coming along.
Thank you so much for watching, and we hope that this video was informative.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.